snap up a lot of great matchups. They really, really have. And as a result, when you are able to do it, you do it. I've said it throughout the course of the program, and I'll reiterate again, okay, and that being this. This matchup will overshadow a lot of the bowl games that are out there.
There's a lot of storylines, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you heard Tom Shanahan, okay, not jumping on Nick Saban bandwagon. He really wasn't, and who the heck would? You being a Miami kid like you are, saw that he made a unheroic exit from the Dolphins. He couldn't, and his quarterback at the time was Joey Harrington, so I won't knock Joey whatsoever for being on the Dolphins. He was, but what I will knock is the fact that their inability to land Drew Brees, and we all know how the dynamics turned out there. So, the reality of the situation is this, okay? When you judge a lot of the bowl games with what you have, I can remember many years ago I went to the Sun Bowl, and the matchup there was Michigan State against USC, and that's a matchup that you saw in the Rose Bowl many years ago. So, and yet that overshadowed the actual Rose Bowl itself at the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas.
I think if there's one storyline I'm most excited about, and I'm just going to put it this way, as wax poetica as I can try to be, Shea Patterson's walking into the Rose Bowl, not the Rose Bowl, Citrus Bowl for a job interview, and his possible employers are 32 NFL teams, and I think that's really what I'll be most looking forward to with that upcoming game. And because, Keller kind of said it himself, he's not the most talented guy in the world, but Michigan also had a quarterback who everybody kind of deemed that way, and I think it's turned out pretty well for that guy. That guy's played in 9 Super Bowls. He's got 6 rings. He's had to get a second hand to hold all the championship rings that he's earned in his time in the NFL. And, I'm not even going to name the guy because we know what we're talking about. But I think if Shea Patterson has a big game, I think I could really see his draft stock kind of going up. He's played under a big-name coach who's had stays at Stanford and the NFL. He's the head coach of a team that took a team to the Super Bowl. So, if you can get a big game out of Shea Patterson, you're looking good moving forward. So, and if Michigan does win, it's 4 10-win seasons for Harbaugh in 5 years at Michigan. Just to further kind of talk about what he's meant to that program and the time he's been there, pulling them from the depths of despair as far as college football is concerned, and turning them into a viable option again at the college level to where they can really be respected out in Ann Arbor. A lot of people now, ever since Harbaugh's been there, they really are invested in Michigan football again. And I think on the other end for Alabama, it's kind of just bittersweet. Nick Saban, he's kind of gotten spoiled by being in the Final Four every season, constantly being ranked number 1, winning a myriad of national championships. I believe he's got 6 of them, if I'm not mistaken. And, it's easy to see why a lot of people don't like the guy because he's, very ego-driven. We saw that with Tua's injury, and now they're playing Mac Jones, and not that that's cost him a playoff spot, but,
right.
A lot of people dislike him for the way that he kind of just doesn't really care about the individual player. It's just more winning, and I think it's more just to shade his own ego. What do you want, Nick? You want your tombstone to say that you won 7 national championships? Great. You did it at the expense of hurting a guy who has a chance to be a really, solid NFL player moving forward in Tua. And, that's something, most people just can't get around.
Well, that's true. Again, you have to basically work through it the best you can, and, and that's what we probably try to navigate through. So
yeah, I think if Alabama were to come out and lose this game, social media is going to have a field day because Saban is, in the era of the internet meme and people being so quick to make, comments and make jokes in lieu of recent events. I think Twitter will be filled with comments about Saban and the ineptitude he's exuded this season, when yet at worst he's going to finish it with a 10-3 season. I mean, we saw FAU win a Conference USA championship and end the year 11-3, and everyone's going crazy about that. But again, context is everything, and FAU is in Alabama. Alabama is arguably one of the 3 or 4 greatest college football programs ever. You put them with LSU, you can put them with Florida, you can put them with FSU. Obviously Bobby Bowden. They've set a bar. That's so high. They're kind of like the New York Yankees of college football, and anything that doesn't end in them, hoisting the college football trophy or having a Heisman Trophy winner is somewhat of an utter failure. But I just think Saban really, this year more than any, I think Nick Saban, other than those abrupt, leaves at obviously Michigan State and now the Miami Dolphins, he's kind of shown why he's so unlikable in the eyes of so many people, whether you're just a fan or you're just a personality who covers and talks sports.
Well, Nick Saban's just unlikable, period, Lewis. I mean, come on, really. I mean, Nick Saban, for all he's worth, okay, he has established a legacy at Alabama like no other, okay? God forbid when the time comes and he leaves, how many coaches will come after him? I remember when Bear Bryant left, okay? Ray Perkins took over the reins, and there were lots of other coaches that fell by the wayside. Gene Stallings did eventually win a national championship with him. So, when you put things in perspective, okay, Nick Saban is going into the Hall of Fame. There's no question about it.
I think if I were to compare him to one player in football, he's like Terrell Owens to me. Where Terrell Owens, you can make a claim as one of the 3 greatest wide receivers of all time, but it was the personality behind the player that totally clouded all of that greatness. And I think a lot of that can be said about Saban. We'll acknowledge how great a player Owens was as a wide receiver, right, but we're also going to talk about the person. And I think that's a lot of what happens with Saban, where the person, I don't think it's going to hold Saban out of the College Football Hall of Fame the way it did.
No, he's a lock to get in the College Football Hall of Fame.
No. Whereas Owens got in, but it took him a couple of years because the media.
Harold Owens, yeah, but all right, I know where you're going with it. Let's just make sure we understand the Owens thing. Okay, first of all, he was a toxic personality in the locker room. Mm-hmm. He was. Period. A lot of teams dumped him because he was toxic in the locker room. Nobody will ever downplay his skill set at all in the NFL. He accumulated a lot of yards. Mm-hmm. He had a lot of good quarterback play behind him, mm-hmm, and he had organizations that spent money. But what gets you booted out of locker rooms in the NFL is your personality. And, I know that down the road, who knows whether you'll cover any NFL games, time will tell. But you get the idea that when you cannot have a toxic personality whatsoever in the locker room, mm-hmm, you can't do it.
No.
And if you do, when that happens, okay, you have division. When you have division, okay, these guys got to live with each other for the better part of, I'd say, 20 weeks if you make it through the year, game-wise, plus training camp, 22. Right, well, that's what I'm talking about. And then you have OTAs. Of course, I don't put a lot of stock in that because you don't know what the final end result roster is going to be anyhow. Do you know what I mean? But that's really the bottom line. And when you put things in perspective, locker room. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was a clubhouse cancer, especially in Dallas. He was horrible there.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's exactly my point. So, so go figure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, it'd be a nice win, too, for Harbaugh because I believe in the 4 bowl games that he's played at Michigan, he's 1-3 in those games, and 2 of those losses have come against SEC teams. As right, we know, Alabama is an SEC team. So as somebody who, and I say this with a smile on my face right now, if only we had a camera in here, how happy would you, and I understand we have to be objective, so you can't really get too high. I mean, they tell us not to cheer in the press box anyway. How elated would you be to see a guy like Nick Saban really just to lose in a fashion that he would to Michigan in this coming game? How much would you, love to see him, take a loss like that to Harbaugh, and for Harbaugh to get a much-needed win against a program like Alabama? We know their struggles against Ohio
where
State.
my attitude is with that. Come on. Really?
Yeah, you'll be like a kid on Christmas morning, probably.
No, I don't know about that. No, the bottom line is Michigan beat Notre Dame, and they need a win against Alabama, okay, to try to help get some of the critics off their back. But I'll go back to the point that Michael Keller made, okay? Until you beat Ohio State, Jim Harbaugh is going to have a lot of those ghosts in his closet. Mm-hmm. That's just all there is to it. If you know anything about that part of the country, mm-hmm, you'll go ahead and understand that that's what it takes.
Yeah, so, I remember, and, it's a little recollection the way that Bill Winters did when he talked to him on your Wild Motormouth and Bill Winters show.
Right.
When we were covering an FAU game, I believe it was the Southern Miss game. It was the week that Michigan played Ohio State, and
right,
we were obviously our focus was that FAU game,
right?
But we were as tuned into the Michigan Ohio State game as we were for the FAU game because it was just interesting to see Harbaugh, the storyline kind of follows and kind of reigns over the game being played at the moment.
Right.
And it would have meant a lot for Harbaugh's reputation to win a game against Ohio State. I think this would be almost as satisfying. I mean, it's a bowl game. They were still in playoff contention then. But, yeah, you would love to see Harbaugh come out victorious. He's such a funny character. I mean, he's so convincing. He's just like kind of like the guy that you want to sit down and have an assorted beverage with, whatever it is, because he's just so like animated.
Well, I've met him. Yeah, you're right. Everything you're saying for a guy that's never met the guy is very much online. You really are. Jim Harbaugh means a lot to the Michigan Wolverines. He's won everywhere he's gone. Okay, here, let's give you a little history lesson here. One of the few things you don't know as much about besides baseball, though you've come a long way. Okay, his first head coaching job in college was at San Diego University. I believe they were the Toros, I believe. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then he goes on to Stanford. How did that work out?
I mean, he played with Richard Sherman, Andrew Luck.
Right. Well, I was going there. Hold on. We'll start out with University of San Diego. Okay, goes on to Stanford University. How did that work out?
And he parlayed it into a 49ers job.
Well, right. Exactly. That's where I'm going with this whole thing. So the reality of the situation, he's won at every stop. And you know what? Michigan went out there and paid him good money. He's got probably paid $7-8 million to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he want to take another NFL job until he's run out the door, which will never happen? Ward Manuel, who's the athletic director for Michigan, loves the guy's work ethic. You can't put Harbaugh on the hot seat. He puts himself on the hot seat. Really, he does. Okay, well, there goes the microphone. But the reality of the situation is he does put himself on the hot seat. And as a result, he holds himself to higher standards. I always admire people that go out there and hold themselves to a higher standard.
He owns it. He owns it. Absolutely.
Well, sure he does. You've come a long way since you started this program. And again, you understand how the system is. You hold yourself to a higher standard to get better, show in and show out, just like Harbaugh does with the Wolverines.
Mm-hmm. And we were having this. I think you and I had this conversation on the phone when we were talking about the Willie Taggart hiring at FAU,
right.
Where FAU's kind of just become this like school where former Division I, big name school Division I coaches go to kind of rebuild their reputation. We saw with Kiffin, he parlayed 2 Conference USA championships into the Ole Miss job. Harbaugh doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that Saban does, where Saban understands he wants to win. That's in his blood. You know, like you've said it, Harbaugh's won everywhere he's gone. But it's not a reflection of him as a person. It's just a reflection of the people that he has around him. And he never wants the spotlight to be on him in any positive. But yet, in a negative light, he totally owns it. And that's incredibly commendable. It's crazy. Jim Harbaugh has 0 national championships, and he has 0 Super Bowls.
No, but he got to one.
Which is, he in 2012. If you were to ask who is the more respected college coach at the moment, Nick Saban or Jim Harbaugh, you respect Saban for all that he's won, but as a personality, and Harbaugh's animated, but he's not somebody that you want to hate.
No, but
I think Harbaugh gets a lot more respect because Saban is more of an egotistical kind of guy.
Well, yes and no. I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that, as a college coach, Saban's won the national championship. So where do you draw the line, Lewis? Okay, in terms of respect of personality. Well, realize that Saban is not liked by a lot of people. It's if you can't read what his interviews are like between the lines, you got to be careful what you say, otherwise Nick will bite your head off. I had more fun with George Steinbrenner, never had a desire to talk to Barry Bonds, nor would I ever have a desire to talk to Nick Saban.
Turn that down.
Yeah, right. So I don't even care. But the reality is that Saban has earned his mark. Got to give him his due. He'll have a statue in Tuscaloosa just like Bear Bryant did. He will. I mean, he's got the hardware and the accomplishments to show for it. Jim Harbaugh's just different, but he's done a lot more on the pro level, and he's also played the game. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that Saban hasn't. Well, yeah. If you go ahead and look at his stats down the road, you'll find that
he was a pretty good player.
Yeah, he was, and Saban hasn't done that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm still waiting for Harbaugh to develop that marquee quarterback at Michigan. He's had some good ones there, but we'll see. Time will tell. Don't want to give it all away today. I'm just hoping that Shea Patterson comes out against Alabama and does a lot of what he did to Notre Dame, because the Ohio State Buckeyes right now are a machine that Urban Meyer built. The question is can Ryan Day sustain it over a long period of time in the next couple of years? Remember, Ryan Day has done a magnificent job with the Buckeyes. He really has. Give the guy his due.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we'll see where it goes when he finally brings in his own players. I remember when Brady Hoke won with Rich Rodriguez's players, okay, and he ended up doing well. But when it came down to recruiting and developing, why do you think Harbaugh took over for Hoke? Hoke was a beneficiary of some good recruiting, and Rich Rodriguez really wasn't a Michigan man anyways, and I don't think he fit in. And Rich Rodriguez has been run out of coaching anyhow. He got run out of Arizona.